Welcome to the Here's Waldo podcast, where we sit down with top visionaries and creatives in the video game industry. Together, we'll unravel their journeys and learn more about the path they're forging ahead. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Mintis, founder and CEO of Here's Waldo Recruiting, a boutique video game recruitment firm. This is the Here's Waldo podcast. In every episode, we dive deep into conversations with creatives, founders, and executives about what it takes to be successful. You can expect to hear valuable lessons from their journey and get a glimpse into the future of the video game industry. Past guests include Ed Fries of One Up, Eve Crevauchet of Take This, and Bernie Yee of Wind Up Minds. This episode is brought to you by Here's Waldo Recruiting, a boutique recruitment firm for the video game industry. We value quality over quantity, transparency, and communication, and diversity. We partner with companies, creatives, and programmers to understand the why behind their needs. We provide a white glove experience that ensures a win-win outcome. Today, we have Gina Jaio on the show. She has been recruiting for over 18 years. The last 9 years, specifically, she's been supporting the video game industry. She's worked for several AAA studios such as Blizzard, NetherRealm, Monolith, Disney Interactive. She is currently the head of recruiting at Dreamhaven. She firmly believes that anyone with a passion for game development can make games no matter who they are. Let's get started. Thanks for being here today. So excited to have another recruiting perspective and feature that.
My pleasure.
Thank you. For any of our listeners that aren't familiar with Dreamhaven, can you give a little background?
Absolutely. So we've been around for about 3 years now. We announced back in September of 2020, so right during the pandemic, unfortunately. But I think it made a big splash in the kind of gaming circuit with all the news channels, IGN, and Games Radar, et cetera, because, with the people who are behind Dreamhaven, all the co-founders are ex-Blizzard, including Mike Morhaime, who was the former CEO and co-founder of Blizzard Entertainment. And so I'm sure everyone's dying to know what we're working on. Unfortunately, we can't share that today. But we've been at this for a little bit now, and so we hope to at least share something with the world sooner rather than later. But unfortunately, we're still kind of stealth mode, and we haven't shared anything about our gameplay or the genre, anything like that. But I'm happy to talk about the company, our goals, our values, as well, to kind of get people a little bit more familiar. We are a values-driven organization. We really want to support our developers, and so we've kind of built the company around our development teams. We have 2 internal studios, Moonshot Games and Secret Door Games. They're very different from each other in terms of what they're working on and even size, but we're all here to support each other. And so we have 2 studios. We also have a publishing organization that will support the 2 studios as well, with everything from go-to-market and marketing, et cetera. And so we're a very small organization. We don't want to get too big. I think we just hit our 100 people this year, so we're excited for that. We still want to make high quality AAA type games, but we feel that we could do it with smaller teams. It gives people more ownership in what they're doing. It really allows people to make a bigger impact as well. And so we have a very kind of collaborative environment where everyone could, everyone has a say, everyone has a voice at the company. We also very much focus on bringing people who also share our same values. We also value making a very safe and inclusive environment for all developers, no matter who they are, where they've come from. We're also trying to give back to the community as well, and helping organizations like Girls Who Code, even the local, Children's Hospital as well. We're very involved with a lot of these kind of community things because we really care about the people in the community who surround us as well. And we also have a number of partnership studios that we're helping, including like Frost Giant and Lightforge, kind of a lot of these kind of very talented developers spinning off from the big companies as well, doing their own thing. We want to support them. And so providing, creative consultation or business consultation, helping them get off the ground, investment opportunities. And so we're kind of very different from your typical AAA company. We're doing a lot of different things here. So we're excited to kind of be in the space, but we, again, unfortunately haven't announced our games yet, but that will be coming hopefully sooner or later at some point.
Exciting. Yeah, I didn't realize you had your hand in so many different pockets. Tell us about your role at Dreamhaven and your past roles and how they tie into what you're doing today.
Sure. So I'm head of recruiting. We're very small though. So it's myself and my partner in crime, Jojo Rain, who's our senior recruiter on the team. We were a team of two. We started just myself initially. I kind of helped take what they've already had, kind of very light recruiting practices, best practices, and really built the recruiting function here. Really think about like how we could involve like our hiring managers as well in terms of making sure that we're having diversity in our kind of the candidates we talk to, all best practices, trying to avoid bias also in our interview process. So we really try our best to make sure that the process is equitable and fair to our candidates. And really kind of leveling that up from all the stuff we've learned from other big AAA companies and bringing to the fold here. Certainly with our company, we're obviously trying to bring people who are super talented, but we also feel that it's important to look for potential as well. People who really care about the gaming space that, is player first, but also how we make games is really important. So will these people share the same values that we also have as well? Are they respectful people, or can they collaborate with others? Those are the kind of things that we look for in our candidates. So kind of building that function up from the ground up has been part of what I've been really doing here, like really focused, but also being involved in the community. We also are trying to do other events and conferences, even though we're not doing a ton of hiring compared to these big AAA companies. We also still want to give back and help people realize like, hey, you can actually have a really great career in games, especially I would say non-majority talent, women especially. They don't realize that there's so many great opportunities for them in games, that we know that there's stereotypes that exist in games, unfortunately, and we're trying to create a space where we can hopefully influence other companies to like, hey, this is a safe space for women or non-majority candidates to also come to as well. So kind of being able to build those best practices and share that with other companies is our goal. So that's kind of everything in a nutshell that we've been doing here. But again, very small team here, just a team of two at this point.
You have a lot of influence. Fun to start from the ground up and be able to influence hiring practices and decisions instead
Absolutely.
of it. And you post career tips every Tuesday. I want to highlight this first, your career tip Tuesday. What inspired you to start that?
I think people are like, I would get lots of messages on LinkedIn, people asking for help, and I wish I could help every person that reaches out to me, but as you probably know, we can't answer every message of people reaching out to us. And so I figured, what if I just start sharing my knowledge? I've been in this industry for like 18 years at this point, in recruiting and in Games 9. I certainly have seen my fair share of things at different companies, different practices. Why don't I give back and help people with like their process of a resume, cover letters, even thinking about their mindset when they're applying for opportunities, leveraging their networks. So I really wanted to kind of give back and help people. And Dreamhaven gives me the opportunity to like really have some bandwidth to be able to do that. Before I was so busy, I could not even spend like barely any time answering any messages on LinkedIn previously. But I really wanted to give back. And so I started the Career Tip Tuesday, but also post other things along the week as well to help people out, especially now when it's been tougher for folks.
Yeah, we were just talking about that before the show. So what advice would you have for somebody who is looking to, if they've been laid off or if they're looking to just change jobs in general during this time?
Yeah, there's some great resources out there right now. I'm sure you've seen as well Amir Satbat's spreadsheet with like amazing mentors on there, opportunities that are constantly updated. That's a great start. But I think also, which I mentioned in my Crypto Tuesdays, is really leveraging your network. I think people, we don't want to bother people. Inherently, we want to, there's a sense of pride. Like, I don't need people's help. I want to try to do it myself. There is a point where you really do have to lean on other people, and people are willing to help. I think, like, especially right now, we're seeing a lot of our friends and former colleagues, unfortunately, being impacted, and all of us can really band together to help each other out this way. And even like sharing opportunities, commenting, tagging people. I know it takes a little bit of work, but I think like there's a lot of things that we could do as a applicant. First of all, is like going out and seeing who you know at these different companies, asking for introductions as well. Really, again, leveraging your network, because that's actually how I was able to find the last, so I would say 3-4 opportunities was really through my network and word of mouth and talking to people and getting buy-in from people, finding sponsors and mentors at companies to help kind of really advocate for you is super helpful. I think a good starting point is really like kind of focusing on where you want to go in your career. I know it's tough right now. People are applying for everything, but if you have a couple of companies you really are targeting, take the time to get to know who's there and really like see who else might know mutual connections there, really understand their values. And when you are reaching out to those folks, expressing like how your values align with theirs as well is really important. That's something that hiring managers I've experienced really pay attention to when people are like reaching out to them and writing cover letters, writing some kind of message to the hiring managers or myself as a recruiter. That's what makes people stand out is really speaking to the company and what they do, what they're trying to accomplish is really important to start with.
Definitely. I feel like once you get into recruiting, and it's like a recruiter's perspective on it, but for sure, do a lot of research, but you're like kind of recruiting people as, you're going to work for them in a way. I think you can also go through financials. I've heard that, like if the company is public, you can go check the shareholder meetings and all of the documentation. And if you're really up to date on the status of the company, people will be so impressed with you.
100%.
Or like maybe there's this podcast, maybe there's a blog, maybe there's some news information that you can read. There's something somewhere, right?
Absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to us and said, "Oh, I really love your games." Like, but we don't have any games.
Yeah.
So how did you play our games? Our playtest and not even know, I don't even know about it, but like clearly people are just, putting the template out there and copying and pasting messages. But like if they followed us from the beginning, that's super impressive. They obviously know about us. They kind of kept watch of us since we announced. But obviously people I know they're applying for multiple positions and it's very easy to copy and paste, but really digging in, like I said, doing the research, find the trends, find the latest news, follow their blogs, see what they've been up to. Like maybe we haven't announced our games, but we recently we did Girls of Code last summer. We're going to another conference very soon at Grace Hopper celebration. If people are aware of that, it shows that they're paying attention to us. They actually do care about what we're doing in the space. So that's how you really make an impression versus kind of doing the blind, like let's apply to hundreds of applications and copy and paste everything. That's least likely getting any attention at all. Like I would really just focus on the couple of places that people really want to work at and dig in and learn about like what this company really does and what they've been up to.
Before you panic apply. Do not get laid off and panic apply.
Exactly. They should have been doing it a long time ago.
Yeah. But it's kind of the same thing for recruiting, just reverse. Like if you're a candidate and you get a bunch of garbage messages from recruiters that like, I'm so impressed with your skills. Like you're not, so it's kind of the same thing applying for a job.
That's very true. Yeah. I think like crafting custom messages is always one that really gets people's attention. Like you really read through their profiles. If I notice someone worked on a really awesome art piece, for example, I'll actually will reference that art piece in my messages to them. I really like this piece that you did. And that gets people to respond right away for sure. And the same thing, like you said, like on the other side of it, like, oh, I noticed the company did this, or I noticed that you were doing the person at the company doing this work. And so that's how you really connect. It's really kind of like connecting people and telling a story is what really it gets people to respond really quickly.
Yeah, regardless if you're a job seeker or candidate seeker.
Exactly.
What are some of the tips you feel like have gotten the most positive response? Can you highlight from your Career Tip Tuesday?
Yeah, I would say I think some parts are very controversial as well. Like I think there's always the controversy of cover letter versus non-cover letter. And I think like any personal message, any way you can personalize reaching out to a company is going to be effective. And people have like gone kind of really above and beyond with their messages because they really like dig into our core values as a company in their message. It does not have to be, I'm not looking for the Magna Carta. I'm looking for a very short message that really speaks to the company, that clearly they've been paying attention. They clearly know that this is a position that's for them and why like this particular company is great for them and personality wise. Maybe they also love the games that we've made in the past, the other companies, they pay attention to that. That also helps stand out as well. But obviously, not everyone agrees that cover letters. They think it's a waste of time. But from my experience in being in games, especially hiring managers from game companies, they really appreciate the personal touches that people put in cover. They actually do read them here, for example. Yeah. And also even like personal work, like maybe they haven't worked on this particular game genre, but they actually worked on their own side project. And it's like, hey, I did some experimentation. Professionally, I did not work in this game engine, but in my own time,
yes.
I worked in Unreal, for example, 5. That really gets people impressed. Like, hey, this person went above and beyond to do the work, to kind of do their homework, because they really want to learn this particular game engine. They also want to learn the genre of the game, put in the extra effort. That makes such a difference. I think even at Blizzard, like someone had created an entire level of Overwatch and like a fan version of their own level, and people were just blown away. Like completely blown away. Like an entire team was talking about it. Also concept art too. Like people were doing their versions of concept art. The characters could actually live in the game itself, because they really focused on the style of the game. They thought about the different game mechanics, how this character can fit in the ecosystem. So it shows a lot of care about what the team's working on, and the games that they've been working on as well. Obviously, like we don't want people to always do this, because that takes a lot of time, and we don't want people are not getting paid for this stuff. But some kind of personal, I guess, journey or kind of effort to show that they are willing to put in time for this, the things that they are maybe missing, makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I feel like you have to connect the dots. I talk to people a lot about this. Like I have a friend who's been laid off at not laid off, his studio has shut down, like 10 of them. But if you look at his resume, you'd say, hey, this guy leaves his studio every year or 2 years, but that's not really the case. So in that case, you just have to connect the dots. Like this happened and this is why I'm looking for stability, which I believe is at your studio. Mm-hmm. But if you say nothing, then like, how do I know?
People don't know. Yeah. People make assumptions. And even though it's like we shouldn't make assumptions, but people make assumptions. Like,
for sure.
Is it because the person was let go and they weren't that good? Or they get bored. There's people out there that just get bored of work and they kind of just job hop. Yeah. And obviously people especially on the game side, because games take years to make, they want people who will stick it through. And so they'll make assumptions. Unless you don't say anything, then we won't know. We'll say, well, this person is not going to stick around. Like, well, how do you know that? And so writing some kind of cover letter, or even putting it in the resume saying studio shut down, it gives us recruiters, we want to help the candidate, and whatever information is on there can only help us sell better to the hiring managers.
Absolutely. And I saw one of your career tips is about being transparent with your recruiter. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and this is it's hard because I think it's a trust thing, and you know I would want to build trust with my candidates. I want to trust the candidate as well, and I always give the benefit of the doubt. So I think candidates often will have multiple opportunities that they're considering, and maybe one opportunity it's a lot more money, or it's just a different industry that they're not sure. They want to change industries. Maybe have that conversation with the recruiter, because I feel like we can help this person figure out actually, does it make sense for them to even continue this process? Maybe those other opportunities are actually really good for them. And if you really trust your recruiter, and for me, I'm thinking about the candidate. If it's not the right fit for us, I'm not going to force it,
right?
Because at the end of the day, if it's not a good fit for the team, they're going to want to end the role. They're going to want to leave, or the person will get let go. I don't want that to happen to the person either. Yeah. So I think it's better to be upfront, saying, look, there's things I really like about the opportunity. There's also things I'm concerned about. And we'll talk about it. Maybe it's kind of like a sounding board. We can help them think through things. If they're thinking about compensation, we could also be very honest with them and say, look, this is a range. We typically hire people at the midpoint. If you have a little bit of experience, we can maybe go a little bit more flexible if you're more experienced. But this is where we're at, and we probably can't go much higher than X amount of dollars. But I'm always here to try. I'm in the corner of the candidate, and I think if they realize that, they're going to be much more open. But I don't want to force them to share things they're not comfortable with. But whenever we do that, though, I feel like it's such an easier, much easier process for them. Like they're getting what they want, out of the opportunity, the compensation package. We're being, where we get the understanding of what their expectations are. It's just an easier process once we have those conversations, and we can help them think them through. So I think they need to realize, like, hey, we're kind of like the middle person for them. Like, we're here to advocate for them. That transparency and trust is so important on both sides. And the company should also be transparent as well. If companies are kind of hiding what their ranges are, or if it's the whole remote situation, maybe they it's a bait and switch and they said, actually, it's not remote. Like, I would be super, I would I'm out of here. Like, this candidate should not be talking to that company at all if they're being shady about that. So transparency on the company also is super important too.
Yeah, both sides. Remote work is such a thing right now, as we have so many return to office mandates. But what I've seen from a candidate perspective, like the job is clearly listed as in office, and people will apply and they're like, oh, well, I hope you can make it remote for me. Like, probably not. I mean, I guess it's worth trying, but you're right. It has to be honest on both sides. And we've seen so many companies that, like Blizzard, like so many companies, for instance, that were remote and said they would
change your mind.
Yeah. And then you've moved to whatever location and you have an RTO mandate. So that's really hard.
That is really hard. And the recruiters we can't predict that. Like, when we're hiring for the role, we're being told, like, okay, it's going to be remote. Right. And so we're going off of what they're telling us. And once the person comes in, they change their mind. Like, no one can predict that future. That part's really hard. As a candidate, they should always ask those questions. And like, be upfront. If they're applying for the role and they hope this role is remote, even though this is on-site, just let the recruiter know. Please. Honestly, I have a lot of people do that too. Like, we have roles that are ideally on-site, but actually we post an on-site, but then we have some flexibility depending on the person's situation. Right. If they're more senior, if they worked remotely before, if they're in the same time zone, that typically like gives us a case to maybe try to fight for this person to stay remote. It's not like completely set in stone, but if the candidate's very honest with us on the front end, that helps the conversation. I could always go to hiring, like, look, this person's fantastic, but they really want to stay remote if possible. Here's the situation. They're in the same time zone. They're willing to come in for quarterly basis. I can help pitch that to the hiring managers, and usually they'll be willing to have a conversation with them, at least have an initial conversation with them. And if it's a good fit, we'll sort of like, hey, like, we're willing to make this remote for you. After they talk to the hiring manager. So just be upfront is what my like, I always tell people, because when you kind of also are your candidate and you don't want to share some information with the hiring managers, and it gets really late in the process and you kind of pull out, and you at that point wasted everyone's time, and essentially can burn a bridge that way. I would hate for that to happen for any candidates. Right. We've had people come all the way through the last bit of the process withdraw because of something that they did not disclose to us, and it doesn't feel good to the hiring managers, and people remember those people. So just, you have a reputation, especially it's a very small industry. Be really careful on what you do and how you navigate companies, because honesty is the best policy on both sides, and people remember when someone's being dishonest.
Yeah, I think especially if you have money that you're leaving, that's so important to disclose. Super early in my recruiting career, I had this candidate who the team loved. They were making an offer. And then at the offer stage, he's like, and I had asked him, but he didn't say anything. But at the end, he's like, by the way, I have $100,000 sign-on bonus that I'm going to leave, and I need that to be made up to me. So I had to have a conversation with the SVP, who obviously is so annoyed. Like, and if you had told this at the beginning and I had anticipated it through the process, it's possible, right? Mm-hmm. It's within the realm of possibility. But if you pull this out at the end, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes them look really bad, and they might even rescind. I mean, companies have the right to rescind an offer if they can't even get close to that. There's no way that's you're forcing that conversation. You're forcing them to do something that's not a small amount. If it's 10,000 or 15,000, maybe, but still, like, being honest on the front end and say, look, like, I really hope you guys can do this. Usually there's no surprises at the end. And, recruiters want to help the candidates. Like, we'll tell the hiring manager, look, like, this person we should really consider giving them some kind of coverage for their sign-on bonus or whatever they're walking away from. We want to help. And if we know that information ahead, and we have time to work that into the compensation package and make the pitch, and then hopefully, come out with something compelling. But we don't know about it. There's no way. It just makes us. We're in a really bad situation if that happens. Like I can't defend a candidate at that point.
Yeah.
Nothing we could do.
I feel like sometimes people don't know for sure. But yeah, also, you talk to people and they tell you they might have stock and you're like, how much? You're like, I don't know. So I feel like if you're a candidate and you think you're going to interview, or if you have a call with any part of the recruiting process, get super clear on where you currently are financially and where that's going to look like for the next few years. It's your responsibility to know and to share.
And we deal with a lot of creatives and they might not know or really care about those details. And so I've had to ask them, like, could you actually go into your portfolio and share that information, because it's really important that we try to at least cover some of that for you and try to explain why. And unfortunately, because again, we're doing a lot of creatives, they don't really think about those kind of things. And so it's totally fine to take a couple of days and get back to the recruiter with that information. That happened. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me, the person not knowing and then coming back to me with that information. That way I could take that information and hopefully make it a competitive package that would be reasonable to the person so we can move forward. Otherwise, we're wasting everyone's time. We're wasting the candidate's time, wasting the hiring manager's time, other interviewers, if we can't even get close to whatever they're walking away from.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you've worked for larger companies like Blizzard, Sony in the past, and now you're working for a smaller company, which is a totally different comp package, but motivations package too. I mean, it's just different to work at a startup. Can you talk to us about how candidates can properly evaluate offers from large companies versus small?
Yeah, I think it can be very tricky. So you have to know what to ask. I think certainly with big companies, the Disneys, the Sonys, the Warner Brothers, you have benefits and things are very expected. You have it's very standard packages, and usually they can tell you straight away what you're potentially getting, and it's very clear. They're ready, they're being traded, so it's very clear on what you're going to make. You're talking to startup companies. Unfortunately, some candidates do get kind of taken advantage of because they don't know what to ask. They don't dig in, and they kind of trust what people are telling them. So really finding out what that full package looks like as well. Like when you talk about RSUs or stock options, some of it, it's obviously not going to materialize anytime soon. So you have to be really careful. You can't bank on those kind of things. Really for smaller companies, making sure that your base pay is, pretty comparable and compelling, and you can live off of that, because I would not bank on profit sharing bonuses or stock options or anything else, because you really do not know what that's going to look like in the future. Because especially now, I would say the startup space, it's very volatile, and we're seeing kind of more conservative approaches now. There's the less investments that there were last year. So being very sure that if you're jumping from a big company to a small company, that you're really focusing on that base pay, because usually also they're not going to be shipping a game anytime soon as well. There's a big gap probably from walking away from your annual bonuses at EA or what have you. So and a lot of times these smaller companies can't cover that even in a sign-on bonus. You can ask for sign-on bonuses, but don't expect them to potentially be able to cover all of that as well. So definitely making sure that you know from your own financial situation, can you take that risk, and do not bank on that, because I can't tell you how many horror stories I've heard of people who would bank on these potential bonuses coming down when that does not materialize, and they're kind of SOL at that point. They really were hoping for that to happen, and for a startup company, it's super risky. Now, there's certainly ask the questions like what's the investment for the company? What's the roadmap? How long? What's the runway? Asking this, because you never know, right? And unfortunately, there's people that are not so honest about those kind of things too. Making sure you get references and the people behind the company. So those kind of questions I would ask if I were people. Now, my perspective, I've never worked for a small company like Dreamhaven before. It's always been the last couple of years big AAA companies or big companies that are publicly traded. But I went this direction. I was actually called by Chris Sigety from Sigador, who I worked with at Blizzard, and I know the people here. I trust them. Mike Moorheim's an awesome dude and good person. And Amy Moreheim's great as well. And so I trust these people. I've worked with them at Blizzard. I know who they are. I know their values, and I'm willing to put that risk. And I also like ask those questions before we got to the offer stage to make sure that I understand like their direction and their investments and all that too. And so it's a very different space. So we're also investing in other companies. So we're not your typical run-of-the-mill small startup either.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very unique situation here. But I wouldn't have gone to another startup company. I think Dreamhaven would be the only place I would go to. But now looking back, I would probably not go back to a big AAA company either. I think I really enjoyed like being able to make a bigger impact here, having a voice.
Yeah.
It's a little scary because you're kind of like laying the tracks down as the train's coming along. And
Yes.
It's my first time like creating things from scratch. It's super fun, but it's also a little scary, but it also pushes you to think differently. We were multiple hats, which is really fun. I get to work with the development team really closely. There's a lot of pluses, and also work-life balance is really important to this company too. And the people, like they really care about the people, and that's a huge difference, especially now with all the things happening right now in the space.
Yeah.
And our values, like really strong values. So I think like at this point, like I probably couldn't go back to AAA, honestly speaking.
That's exciting. No, you do get to wear so many different hats. And I feel like people get so tied up in the compensation. And especially if they've been working at probably Monsters or Amazon or Meta, and they're at this really high bar, they say they don't want to take a step back. But like there's always a point, there's so much money you need to live and maintain your lifestyle. And then after that, I think it's really important to figure out what you value. And if you have a bunch of kids going to college or, personal financial obligations that you really need to take care of, that is one thing, but that's not always everything. So.
Right, exactly. Happiness is, so definitely a fraction of it is living, but also like the ability to give back, to make an impact, to see your work kind of pan out as well, and to be respected and to collaborate with others. That's a big difference, at least for me personally speaking.
And have a lot more ownership too. I think a lot of times at a big company you're doing one specific thing, and at a small company you can try out a lot of different things.
It's super fun. It's absolutely, every day is different. That's the beauty of working for a smaller company.
Yes, every day is definitely different. Can you share some tips for creating a positive candidate experience, even for somebody who might not necessarily get hired?
Yeah, I think while you're as a candidate, it's always good to build relationships. Like even if you don't get the job, I think like I can't tell you when I was early in my career, like how many rejections I've gotten. I've gone through so many. I was a coordinator. Went through a ton of interviews, but I met a lot of great people. I met a lot of great people and kept in touch with them. And so when they did have an opportunity, I was on top of their mind because they remembered me. And so I think like it's really important that candidates cultivate the relationships, because it's very, very common that for the job that you really want, you won't get it initially. You'll take a couple of tries, and also getting coming back with more experience, with more skills, with more maturity, and at that point you're a better candidate. And it actually happened a lot at Blizzard. Like a lot of people would not get the job initially. They would come back maybe another year after doing another test and really kind of honing in their skills, and they'd also build the relationships with the hiring managers and interviewers. And so it's important to kind of continue cultivating relationships, especially in games where it's such a small industry, everyone knows each other.
Yeah.
And so really like that's where I've found to be super successful on the company side, but also as a candidate side, is kind of being able to leverage those relationships as well. So I think that's one key thing to remember as a candidate.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to be transparent and leave on a good note and just not surprise the company, because you're probably going to work with somebody that you interviewed with again in the near future, either at your studio or you're going to work for them. It's crazy.
It's very, very possible. Absolutely. Like I can't tell you how many people I've run into. Like even here at Dreamhaven, there's a couple people I worked with at WB. Like it just like 10 years ago almost at this point. And so keeping great relationships at that point. And I think that it's challenging also when you're a candidate, especially in this environment, to not take it personally.
Right.
I know it's really tough right now, and people are upset, they're angry with the system, they're angry at the situation that they're in, but not to take it out on people, not to take it on the recruiter, not to take it on the hiring manager if they're not the one, to not take the news personally. And it's hard for the hiring manager right now. They've got a lot of great talent right now. They only have one or two positions to fill. They have to make a tough decision. It may not be the person, it might be the person that gets selected because maybe the person is not local, or maybe the person is missing X skill, and the person has to realize, you know what, it was really close. I got to the interview stage. I met some great people, and try to stay positive. I'm not trying to be a toxic positivity either, but taking what you've learned from that process and maybe also learning from it and honing your skills is the best way to approach the interview process if you don't get the job. And also like being gracious about be able to meet people that you met and take your time, knowing that everyone also on their end spent the time to meet with the person as well.
Yeah. And interviewing is practice too. So if you can learn from that interview and learn what didn't go wrong, I think, and ask for feedback. I know there are some legal issues around that, but sometimes there is feedback that can be shared.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like people, I think during the interview process, like people tend to like not be great at active listening to. They're not listening to what the person's asking, for example. They're not making sure that the question was answered correctly. So those kind of things I can easily tackle. I can say, hey, like just letting you know that during the interview process, it didn't go well because of this, because they were asking the question and they were asking different ways and you weren't getting to the point. Yeah. And taking that feedback and not making it personal, saying, okay, I need to fix that problem going forward in my future interviews. So those people who are really adaptable, who can take feedback, are the ones who are the most successful I've seen, and coming back and finding opportunities shortly after that.
Okay, so you talked about having mentors and sponsors and how that's a game changer. And I think for me too, personally, that's like how I've had any success ever. Can you go into that a little bit more, what the difference is and how people can find them?
Yeah, I've had several mentors and also sponsors, and I think people also don't realize that there is a difference. Like sponsors are usually at a higher level at a company. They're not your like manager or anything like that, but can help advocate for opportunities in the future for you. But they also expect something back, like you might give back with sharing kind of latest and greatest trends. For example, I had a great sponsor, and it wasn't something like I went over to the person and say, hey, could you be my sponsor? That's not like usually how it goes. Like you basically build a relationship, you have coffee chats with them and say, look, I really value your expertise. You've been in the company for a very long time. Do you have a couple of minutes? And so just kind of building that relationship, and if they're willing to meet with you regularly, and then you can also like say, hey, like I really want potentially to move over to this other department, or I want to get in this particular area. Is there anything you can do to help me kind of guide me on what I need to do that? And then of course, like coming in as with a fresh perspective, you can also provide them with the latest greatest trends of things that you're noticing in your discipline, as well as to give back. If they're going to advocate for you, they want something ideally in return. Yeah. So my situation, it was like one of the heads of HR, and he like knew how passionate I was in games. Wasn't supporting the game development teams directly at that point. And so I had like said, like, I really would love to support the developers at some point. Obviously they were fully staffed at that point, but he knew how passionate I was. I always try to give him updates on the latest and greatest trends in games, because I was a huge gamer, always kept with the latest and greatest news. And then when an opportunity did come, I didn't have to ask. Like he had thought of me for the role and asked me if I wanted to move into that role. So it just so happened because I built that relationship. And also just kind of having the courage to reach out to other people around the organizations that you're in, to like if you're interested in a specific area, or someone potentially could give you more insights on a skill set, just reaching out to them, having a quick coffee chat to kind of spark that conversation. So it's been certainly helpful to me in my career. And I think people are probably very like, I don't want to bother that person. And just have that conversation take them off of coffee and figure out what their favorite like drink is, and then treat them to a coffee and say, I just need like 15, 20 minutes of your time to start with, and see how it goes from there.
Yeah, I talked to Bernie on one of my first podcasts, and he said he had somebody ask him for his time, but then never followed up because they're like, I thought you were too busy. He said, I've already agreed to do this with you.
Yeah.
I'm in control of my own schedule. So I think ask and then follow up.
Yeah, and put something on their calendar and like organize a time and place, and maybe find out what their favorite treat is as well. I've had, I think, funny story at Disney. I had a new hire that started with me, and we were just chatting about how she got the job. And she said she was in a different department, and she was really gunning for this department. I forget, I think it was in PR or something like that. And she found out who the hiring manager was, found out like their favorite drink. She talked to their assistant to get all the details.
Yeah.
Got time with them, and they were like, how did you know what my favorite drink was? Like, she was just like really impressed how much digging she did to find out like all this information. And eventually she got the job. So because once the opportunity came up, she was on top of their mind.
Yeah, I love that. That's really sweet. What's the most heartwarming hire that you've ever made that really sticks with you? I'm sure there are a ton, and feel free to anonymize it.
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I would say, I don't want to embarrass this person, but this is someone I had known from another company, and this person and I were talking about this opportunity at another company, and they really were kind of heartbroken of all the kind of the negativity that they've seen in games, and all the difficulty, especially for women, to get into games as well. And so they actually started kind of tearing up when they were talking to me at like how disappointed they were with these big AAA companies and their approach. And so, because Dreamhaven and some other companies we really care about making a safe space for us. Like, they were like really gravitated towards that, and they talked about like how their values are aligned. That like they've been looking for a company that also really created that space for people, that respected people, no matter who they were. And so you can see how much they're pouring their heart out at me at this point. And you could tell how genuine they were, and went through the interview process also, that they really talked about, they were the one who brought up the values that we had, and clearly care about that. And so we hired them, and they were so happy, and this person's been incredible in helping us kind of bring other talent as well into the company. It's really kind of getting the core of like who we are as a company and our values. And that really like warms my heart when I think about that moment where they were like, oh my gosh, like I've been looking for this type of company for my career, and like, unfortunately all the negativity that's happened, and so we're kind of like this beacon of light for them. So
it is so rewarding when it works in recruiting. Mm-hmm. There's lots of interesting journeys along the way.
That's honestly why I do it. I mean, I just to see people's, like, we're giving them their dream jobs, and the faces light up, and they're so excited. I think that's the best part of the HR process. Like, we're the fun part of, like super excited about joining the company. And, I think that's always, that's why I do what I do, is kind of hearing people's stories and how they're doing something they're really passionate about.
Yeah, for sure. My favorite person I've ever hired accepted a different offer, and they were from this large company, and both companies were giving them the same equity. But we talked about like the probability based on founders, based on like, past success and everything. And we had this big conversation, and they ended up taking the offer and then following up later and being like, this is the best decision I ever made. I love it so much. Like, I'm so happy here. The other company crumbled. I'm so glad you helped me. And it's so rewarding.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, always ups and downs. So you have to be able to deal with them.
Very true.
I want to go back to something you said about Dreamhaven and how you're really building a diverse and inclusive culture. What tips do you have that companies could employ to make more of a diverse and inclusive culture, both on the hiring side and on the retaining side?
Yeah, I could start with the hiring side. I think, first of all, like, there should be an effort to not scare off non-majority candidates when they're applying for the job. I think there's too many companies out there with their job description. And when I look at job descriptions of other companies, I'm like shaking my head because they have like impossible kind of list of requirements, and they're like 10 years of experience. And like, okay, honestly, if you're going to 10 people, they're going to be, unfortunately, cis men. That's just the cis white men, and that's just the people who have that most experience. So we actually made a very conscious effort to change the mindset of creating job descriptions to actually take out any mention of years of experience and really talk about like their responsibilities, what they're doing, and try to keep it more light. And that way it's not scaring people off. That's a good first step. And secondly, to actually proactively go out and talk to non-majority candidates. And so the sourcing part comes in. And so we actually source for roles before they actually go live on job postings, talking to a lot of diverse talent out there, because oftentimes they're not looking because they're really either happy where they are, they're being well treated, and so they're not actually out there, or they won't apply because they're scared that this job, they're not even qualified for this job, which very happens, especially for women.
Yes.
They won't even apply because they're like, I don't have this particular skill set, and I might be able to learn it, but you guys probably want to go for another candidate. I'm like, no, like you can actually do this job. And so we take the time to actually talk to these folks ahead of time and really help sell the opportunity to them. And so getting the funnel itself, like open that up to diverse talent is a second part that we try to focus on, like I always advise other companies to do too. A third part is the actual interview process. And I think like really trying to remove biases is really important. And it's hard because everyone has inherently biases. And so we also, the thing I noticed about game industry is that everyone does backdoor references. They will call people like, hey, do you know this person at this company? Or they work with the person, and they will tell like everyone, okay, I worked with this person, they're great, or this person was horrible. Trying to like really like not talk about the feedback of previous experiences until the end. The interview itself should be focused on the interview. Like the feedback should really focus on the interview itself, where this person's currently doing, not what they did like 5-10 years ago. Maybe bring it up to the hiring manager directly, but not during the interview process where you can actually inadvertently create bias. Because if interviewer A talks to interviewer B and say, hey, actually, I heard this person was like really bad, and that was 10 years ago, that's going to create a bias automatically. They're going to shut the door on this person before they even have a chance to interview. And so I think everyone should get a chance, an equal opportunity chance to interview, to talk about their current experiences. And there's concerns maybe with like maybe they didn't know how to collaborate really well. Maybe that was an isolated incident. And so like talk about that in the interview. Like, how do you collaborate with others? How do you work with others? What happens when you disagree with someone? Kind of having hiring manager really pinpoint those kind of things, but not talking about that with other people ahead of time, because again, it creates those kind of biases.
Yeah.
And then also making sure that your panel is diverse as well, and not forcing it, but like if there is women on the team, like making sure that they're also included in the panel. Because I can't tell you how many times at my previous companies where like the candidate would come in and say, okay, you have no women in your panel. Like, do you not have any women in your department? And so it's really embarrassing because we just didn't include them in the interview process. And so why wouldn't they be included? They should also have a voice on the candidates coming into the department as well. So I can't tell you how that's happened. And then lastly, like we follow kind of like our version of Rooney Rule as well. And Rooney Rule in NFL is like they have to interview at least one diverse candidate for a coach position, for an NFL coach. And so we also require that our hiring managers interview one diverse candidate for all our positions as well, whatever is open. So we try to follow that as well. And so that's been really successful. That helps us kind of see different types of candidates. Yeah. And we're also trying to skew more on potential and what we call, which I love the hiring managers to say this, the willing heart. Are they adaptable? Are they willing to learn? Are they do they have an empathy as well for the players, for other people in the team? We're kind of looking for the soft skills that makes it easier to look at more junior candidates versus someone who has like 15 years of experience, really that kind of taking a deeper dive into these inherent personality traits. as well. So that's kind of my tips on the diversity front. Also working with organizations as well, like Wiki is great. I think you're also working with Wiki. We're going to Grace Hopper Celebration, which is the largest gathering for women in computing, like software computing. And even though we're not hiring immediately for full-time positions, we're actually giving back and educating people on you can actually have an opportunity in games as a woman. Like these are different disciplines that we want to talk to you about, and just meeting people there and kind of building relationships. So we're really trying to give back. And I think companies can also take this step. It's not a ton of money. Like I think like the lowest tier sponsorship, for example, is like 15,000 for virtual sponsorship. Compared to other bigger conferences, that's like much smaller amount of money. And it's really like the time that your people are giving back to educate and build relationships. That's the important part as well. So
yeah. Like TLDR, make a concerted effort through all. So many companies tell me we just don't have any diversity, but yeah.
And they're so like it's multi-pronged, and they have to do all these. They should be looking at all these different factors, but they're like coming to you like, okay, well, we need more diverse talent. Well, then you have to. There's so many things you need to change, like your mindset on, like you need not to just hire people, but also giving back. And like you said, like when they're here, making sure it's a safe space for them, and making they have a voice as well, that they have a community, they have a support group. If something does happen, that the process feels fair and they feel heard, and they don't feel like there's people against them, that they actually have a person to go to, or a tool to use, or a resource as well. So we're kind of building those kind of tools, making sure we've actually asked all of our employee population, what are things that you would look for if something did happen, or what are things that we could do better internally that you would feel more supported being a non-majority person.
I love that. I like that. Ask the right questions. Maybe find them a mentor.
That'd be great. Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't have to be someone in the department, it could be someone in a completely different department as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of approaching the job market, like in preparing for interviews, what advice do you have for people who are, just thinking like, how can they find a job? We talked about people that have applied for like hundreds and thousands of jobs. Is there anything else they can do to really stand out in terms of like anything really?
I think like the thing I've noticed, and I talked about a little bit on my my posts here, is like I've noticed a lot of like Discord groups springing up too. If you're a big layoff like Meta and Google and kind of these bigger companies, there's a lot of like employees will kind of create their own groups to support each other. And that's great because not only can you like get other people to look at your resumes and kind of at least jump in on those kind of things, but they also can help introduce you to other people. Yeah. And if they're interviewing for a role, someone gets a job, they can recommend another person on that same group for the job as well. And that's something that's very common. Like I will go and talk to all of our new hires, say, who do you know? That's really awesome. These are jobs that we have open right now. These are jobs that we're going to be opening. Who do you know? Like that's something that I absolutely will take advantage of at this recruiter in-house. And so when someone comes to me with those recommendations, I'm going to listen. And so the hiring manager. So it's very effective. And so it's just, if you don't have a group for the company, maybe you were laid off at Ascendant, for example, like create a group, then start kind of helping other people. If you help other people, they're going to help you. And so it's coming together and building this community that's I've noticed being the most effective in this kind of environment. Unfortunately, doing the mass applications is probably the least effective because as an internal recruiter, I could tell you we're being inundated by applications. And while like we're smaller, we can deal with the volume. A big company probably could not even get to any of their candidates. They probably filter searches or just take referrals or people that the hiring manager might know as the first couple of candidates because they're just so overwhelmed with people applying. So really honing in on like those network connections. if someone, if someone, like was a manager, but they're at a different company, like check where people have gone. Like
Yeah.
people have probably like who left even before like layoffs have happened. Where have these people gone in your network? Checking that too. It takes some time, but you can really figure out where people have gone and kind of like reach out to them, say, hey, like I noticed you're at this company and I noticed I have an opportunity that I seem to be a good fit for. Do you mind like forwarding my resume over to the hiring manager, or just asking for like a favor like that? It's very easy, make it easy for them. Like create like a quick email like with your resume, cover letter, and they could just forward it off to the person. And I can tell you that I've gotten people interviews through that kind of process. It's like, hey, like can you just forward, and someone will get an interview immediately. So
yeah,
that's more effective than applying and posting and praying, as we call it, or applying and praying you're gonna get picked up by reviewed by a resume. So
yeah, it's really hard, definitely. And I think as recruiters, we know so many people and can easily just forward along. So if you have a good relationship with a recruiter, that can go.
Absolutely. We're your friends. Like people, like recruiters, we want to help. We want to help people.
Yeah.
If you are respectful to us and build a relationship with us, we're going to help you as much as we can.
Right. But that does not mean message me and ask me to find you a job, because that's not how it works.
Help you find a job. Like this is my resume. Can you just, and like, without doing any research, like at all. Like the more specific people are, the easier it is for me to help them. Someone's like, hey, I noticed you worked at Blizzard, and do you happen to know anyone in this department? This is my resume. This is my portfolio. That's much easier thing for me to do, to forward along, versus like line, like, can you help me find a job? Like I'm ours. Like do you work at any companies that could use my skill set? Like, dude, you needed to work too. This is like I'm here to help you, but I'm not going to do your work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. What questions do you think a candidate should ask? Like it's a two-way street, and I think people forget that a lot. So what do you think is important for candidates to look out for?
I think this day and age, we talked a little bit about relocation. I think making sure that you're really asking the question, even though it could change, like, you could say, is it possible? Like if you're being hired remotely, is it possible? Has the company changed their mindset on return to office? Has anyone else been asked to come in, like any department? Like the recruiter will know and be able to share with you on that. I'm just worried people getting screwed over. Like if they're literally they cannot move back, especially looking at Southern California right now, it's super expensive, and they moved out of California to be in a much more affordable state, and they can't move back. Be very clear. Like I say, I cannot move back. Like I'm staying in Texas, for example. Like please let the hiring manager know, is there any possibility it needs to be remote? Like ask those questions up front. Yeah. And if they're in California, also they should be posting their salary ranges on their job description. If they're not, I would be concerned. They could actually be fined at this point. Yeah. They've had since January to make that change. If they haven't done that already, I would be concerned that they're being a little shady.
Washington and New York too. Any company with more than 15 full-time employees.
There you go. And so they should be doing that. And you can ask, like, where are you in that range for this role? Because sometimes they'll post a very wide range.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems ridiculous. Like, how can you be like 70,000 to like 150,000? That makes no sense. Like, ask them, like, where are you looking to? What's the goal? What level are you hiring at this role for? And so each company has their own way of leveling too. Like senior. Could be senior 2, could be senior 3, but they're not clear on the job description. Ask those kind of questions, like where are you, even based on the candidate. They might be like, I'm very experienced, I'm more of a senior 2 by your levels. Do I fit that band? And just having that honest conversation. You don't have to share what you're making or anything like that, but just being very upfront on what your expectations are with the hiring manager.
The only thing that's kind of helpful, I think, is if you're making a lot of money. Like, let's say you started your career at Meta 3 years ago and you're making, and what you may come to find out is an abnormally large amount. Then I think it's great to give that, like, hey, by the way, I am at this high amount. And I maybe don't expect you to hit it, but I just wanted to let you know. I think that's beneficial. And on the flip side, if you're drastically underpaid, I mean, you don't ever have to tell anybody your base salary. So I've had candidates tell me their salary, and I'm like, you can tell me that. That's fine. But here's some research. You need to research what is appropriate for someone at your level. And you can say that you want that, but you don't need to disclose.
Exactly.
What you're underpaid.
Yeah, some people are very honest, which I appreciate, but I would never even I protect my candidates that way. Like they're very underpaid at their company, and obviously try to fight for them for a competitive level, but they don't have to share if they're underpaid. But you're exactly right. If someone's super high, just be honest, because you're probably not going to be able to get that same rate. But the recruiter probably can come back and say, maybe we could probably be a little bit flexible around this range, and so having that conversation and having some kind of ballpark to start with, that way you're not wasting everyone's time. The candidate's time is not wasted, the hiring manager's time is not wasted. Just having that kind of honest conversation with them is super helpful.
Oh, that's really important. I have one last question before I ask it. I want to point people to your website at dreamhaven.com. The last question is, who has made the biggest impact on your career? Who would you think, if you were at an award ceremony, that has really inspired you, mentored you, made an impact?
Oh my goodness, that's a really tough question because I have so many great mentors. I would say at this point, it would be Lenny Grassi. He's my former, he was head of recruiting at Disney, and I was under him on the game side, and he's actually the one that helped me transition over to Blizzard, because I had told him very early on, I want to continue helping build and staff gaming teams, building and scaling teams for internal game studios. And when Disney kind of did that pivot where they weren't doing internal development anymore, I told him, look, I can't stay here because it's all third-party work, and I really want to continue helping developers directly. And I said, I'm looking at Riot, I'm looking at Blizzard, and he and I chatted, and I actually created a spreadsheet. These are different things. If I went to Riot, if I went to Blizzard, these things considered, he was super impressed with that. But he actually made the call over to the head of HR at Blizzard and saying, you need to hire Gina. And even though I was leaving his company and his team, he really wanted me to stay. He knew how passionate I was. And so because of that, I've now, looking back, to work at Blizzard and work for great people like Mike Morheim, I would not have been able to have that opportunity unless he made that call and helped me. And I Blizzard was kind of my dream job at that point. And I was able to follow people from Blizzard to Dreamhaven. And so I never imagined I could be working so closely with these amazing, talented developers who are just good people at heart too.
That's amazing.
So I have Lenny to thank for a lot of that. And occasionally he and I will keep in touch, but he's actually out of games. He's at Atlassian now, but I continue to think about what he helped inspire me, and he gave me a lot of feedback. I think when he first started, I chatted a lot about things I need to work on, and I had some really good feedback from him, and I took those to heart, and I tend to think to where I am right now.
Yeah, to Dreamhaven too, right? That's all one big connection.
Yeah.
And I like that you were honest too about leaving and why, and just direct. That's
he supported me with that too.
That says a lot. That's amazing. We've been talking to Gina Jaio, who's director at recruiting at Dreamhaven. Gina, where can people go to contact you? I know you get a lot of contacts, or learn more about you.
I think my LinkedIn profile is the best way to find me. Gina Jaio, GinaJaio. You can find my LinkedIn. That's the best way to follow my content there. And I try my best to respond to everyone that reaches out to me, even though it might be slow. But I actually do make a point to respond to everyone that reaches out to me.
I love that. I do too. I have to block out wee evening hours. Just go through it.
Yeah, if you see messages at midnight, it's because I really wanted to get back to everyone. But yeah.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. It was great talking to you and also having a conversation about recruiting and hiring practices.
Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. To catch all the latest from Here's Waldo, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes. We'll see you next time.